Bobby Lee, thanks so much for coming on Wall Street Unplugged.
Yes, Frank, thank you for having me. Excited to be on your show.
Well, let's bring everyone in here, right? A little bit of a history of yourself where you received your bachelor's, master's degree out of Stanford around 1998. Perfect timing for the internet boom. You worked at Yahoo for 8 years. I believe it was Walmart China as well. You became vice president of technology. How did all this, being an engineer and all working at these firms, how did that lead to you becoming a pioneer in Bitcoin?
Well, it happened 10 years ago. So this spring is my 10-year anniversary for being involved with Bitcoin. For the first 2 years, it was as a hobbyist, as an amateur. Started mining it. I found out about Bitcoin through my brother, Charlie Lee, who's famous in his own right, I guess. And everyone knows him. He's a creator of Litecoin, of course. So he learned about Bitcoin, I believe, through some online forums in early 2011, and he soon told me about it. And he and I, we were very close brothers, 2 years apart, and we had always been investors in gold, and always thought about, prior to Bitcoin, we've had these deep conversations about what makes gold valuable. I think that those conversations really made us understand that Bitcoin can be valuable because of its sort of features and functionality. And of course, we both have computer science background, so the notion of a decentralized peer-to-peer network and all that stuff, even though it was new at the time, but it was something that we could sort of wrap our minds around it. So we got involved in 2011. He started mining. I followed him and started mining some Bitcoin. And then for the first 2 years, it was just as a hobbyist, mining Bitcoin. And then I got really into it professionally in early 2013. That's when I dedicated sort of my job career-wise into Bitcoin. And for most people, that was unheard of in early 2013 to jump into Bitcoin, straight in. Yeah, so that's the start. Yeah.
No, that's great. So you mentioned something interesting there where you were a big believer in gold. And I know we'll talk about your book in a little bit, but you talk about like the history of gold and how it came up to this, gold standard, how it came up to gold standard as US. When you look at Bitcoin and gold, I feel like they're enemies among the people where you can't own both. Yet it seems like they both provide services that, whether it's a store of value, whether it's an alternative currency, not that gold is an alternative currency, Bitcoin has probably more uses. But do you see, what's the big difference between these two? And are you invested in gold anymore? Or you see it, hey, it's Bitcoin is much, much better than gold?
So certainly my Bitcoin investments have appreciated a lot more than my gold, but I still am a investor in gold. I buy more gold every year. So I'm accumulating gold on the side as well. And to me, aside from gold being, shiny and pretty, precious metal, very dense and heavy, we all know that. But the most important thing about Bitcoin and gold, and the similarity, is that both of them are what we call bearer assets. It's a notion of a financial asset where the person owning it, who has direct control, is the owner. So it's not it's not a titled asset. So for most people, the financial institutions, the assets we own, mostly are titled assets. Think about the money in a bank account. Your money in a bank account is titled to your name, meaning the bank account is opened in your name, as shown on your ID, driver's license, passport. And same with stocks and bonds. If you have a brokerage account, that's a titled asset. Same with real estate. If you own houses, own a home, it's titled asset tied to your name. And same things with large purchases such as cars. Some people might have own boats or airplanes. Those are all titled assets. And what's unique about gold and also with Bitcoin is it's not a titled asset, rather it's a bearer asset, meaning that you can own it by holding it and there's no third party in control of that asset telling you what you can and cannot do with it. So that's a huge distinguishing point. So prior to Bitcoin is the first bearer asset available in digital form. Whereas in the physical world, gold is the go-to bearer asset in the physical world. So with the advent of the internet, how we're in the digital society now, it was important for humanity to invent and create a new bearer asset suitable for internet commerce. And Bitcoin was that invention. It took decades and decades of research. And finally, 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto proposed a white paper. Even then, very few people gave it credit. Very few people just wrote it off. It was ignored pretty much. And then 2009, when he launched the network in January, that's when Bitcoin was born. And again, as history shows, for the first few months, very few people pay attention to it. Yeah. But the breakthrough is that it's a digital bearer asset, first of its kind.
So speaking of paying attention to it, we've seen over the past, say, 6 months, 9 months, maybe it's a year, where, say, a MicroStrategy come in, use their cash balance to buy Bitcoin. We'll get to Elon Musk in a second because the back and forth is kind of funny. And it's entertaining, and I know the guy loves the attention. But, we've seen companies actually start using their cash balance for this. And we see how volatile it is just this week, right? I mean, it was 60, it's 45, 50, back and forth. Do you see more adoption that way from institutions, or do you see it more as, a lot of companies creating stable coins, easy way to transfer, money back and forth? I mean, how do you see this playing out going forward?
So I think it's two different issues here. So obviously, stable coins have become very popular. Started with Tether, otherwise known as USDT, but it's sort of an offshore, unregulated stablecoin. In the US now, we have a very regulated stablecoin called USDC, and of course, Facebook, for the project formerly known as Libra, has relaunched as Diem. So it's going to launch a stablecoin as well. I think starting with the US dollar version. So the point I want to make is stable coins are by definition stable, yet because they are stable and tied to an existing currency, they are by definition centralized, either centralized tied to an entity or centralized tied to the government. So governments can issue stable coins as well, central banks can issue it, as well as private financial institutions can issue stable coins. So stable coins are a form of digital currency. However, they're not the decentralized digital currency that Bitcoin is. So in other words, I've been around this for 10 years now. My thinking on this continues to evolve. I continue to learn about and get a deeper knowledge of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And my current thinking is that stable coins are great for payments because they hold their value when you think in terms of the traditional fiat money. If you're thinking in dollar terms, stable coins by definition are very stable in value and not volatile. On the other hand, Bitcoin cryptocurrency is what I consider as an investment. It's and society has shown it over the last 10 years, sadly, not a lot of places and merchants and places take Bitcoin as payment. Tesla toyed around with it recently. It revoked that, so you can no longer buy a Tesla with Bitcoin. What a shame! But nonetheless, the way I see it is Bitcoin is more of an investment. You can invest in Bitcoin because it is grossly underappreciated right now, and then when you sell it, you have to pay capital gains, but hopefully at a much higher return. And with that money, you can go buy things with it. So those are sort of my views on that.
Well, talk about that. I mean, decentralized, but and you mentioned this in your book, how you're not so worried about regulation down the line. But then we saw the current administration throw out a number that they might tax Bitcoin, to infinity, right? So, which would be huge. It's probably not going to happen, but they just said it's a possibility. So, what are some of the things that could derail this to the point where, to me, listening to you, it seems like you're not worried about regulation, but there are a lot of people that are saying that really could calm this down or stop it from really scaling, where, I mean, there's still probably 99% of the people that still don't know how to access this, right? This market's still in its infancy right now. How do we get to scale it if we have governments out there that are kind of, trying to hold that back right now?
Yeah. So again, Bitcoin is really decentralized, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. So I think the most important functionality is its unstoppable feature. It's really alive and well. It's, by the way, it's been over 12 years, so it feels like it's been a long time. But I want to just bring everyone, just take a step back and think about, in human years, 12 years, a 12-year-old child is still in middle school and not even a teenager yet. So imagine what would happen when Bitcoin turns 18 years old, turns 21 years old. I think it has a lot of room to grow. Right now, in a mere 12 years, it's reached $1 trillion in circulation value. I know the daily prices, weekly prices change that quite a bit due to the fluctuation. But in my opinion, 1 trillion is a drop in the bucket for a global reserve asset class, which I know Bitcoin is and will become. So I think by the time Bitcoin turns 18, by the time Bitcoin turns 21, give it another 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I think it easily reach at least 10 trillion, if not $100 trillion. And by the way, if the U.S. Federal Reserve continues to print money at the current rate, then inflation will come around the corner, and Bitcoin can even head much higher. So the reason it's volatile is because over the years, Bitcoin is climbing such a steep hill, right? Because of human greed and fear, the prices doesn't go up from 0 to 100 trillion in a straight line. It would have to go up gradually and fall back down for corrections. So that's my sort of explanation why it's so volatile. But every few years, it goes up an order of magnitude. So I urge people to not get frightened by the short-term volatility and really think about the long-term potential. And in terms of regulation, it's natural that governments, for something they don't have control over, they want to control it. But the nature of Bitcoin is it's a wild animal. It's not to be domesticated. So it's going to be constantly at odds with what the regulators want. And it's a good thing. That way it's really independent.
Yes, no, makes sense. And other risks include what now we're hearing, right? I mean, Elon Musk did a total about face on this and said, I love Bitcoin, buying it for Tesla. And then he said, the electricity usage is bad for the environment. Is this really a concern? I visited mine facilities, and the electricity use is pretty insane. But is it to the point where this could derail that growth as well? Because, climate change in the U.S. and a lot of other places, it's a religion, right? Whether you agree with it or not, you can't provide facts. You can never change someone's mind. They just believe it. And Elon came out and said, we haven't sold any more Bitcoin, right? Just sold Bitcoin last quarter, which conveniently made the quarterly estimates due to that. And I'm a fan of Elon Musk, but is this really a concern that we could see out of institutions who already adopted it, and maybe they follow his lead here?
Yeah, for sure. I think more and more companies will adopt Bitcoin as a sort of holding on their balance sheets. I think MicroStrategy was one of the first public companies to do so in a large scale, and Tesla is a second, and it's doing an even larger scale. Having purchased what was, I think, 1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin back in Q1. I think that amount has gone way over $2 billion. And think of so today we just have a few companies doing it, but I predict that in a few years we'll have many more companies, especially S&P 500 companies, starting to embrace Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin goes to $100, $200, $500,000, that's when more companies will pile in. And by the way, I also have a prediction that in the next cycle, that's when nation states will start tiptoeing into holding Bitcoin as part of their foreign currency reserves. Mm-hmm. So as you know, aside from the United States, almost every country out there practically has to hold foreign currency reserves, most usually in US dollars or in euros, and they hold it in cash or in sort of US treasury bonds, stuff like that. So I think that mix will tip into Bitcoin in the coming years, in probably 4 or 5 years. And even major countries will do it probably in the longer time scale, probably 5 to 10 year time scale. So I think it's a trend to come, just because, just like individuals started holding it, like myself many years ago, and then sort of funds, family offices started holding it, institutions, endowments, university, college endowments started holding crypto. And now it's companies, and then it's just gonna go up the pecking order. Yeah. So I think it's very natural.
So where do you see, as someone who's obviously attached to China, and people who don't know, everyone who's listening to you right now in Bitcoin knows who you are, but say for people who don't, you in 2017, I wasn't 2017, it was earlier than that. I think it was 2011. You established the very first crypto exchange in China, BTC China. But in 2017, yes, right. The government was against it, shut a lot of these things down. Why is China so against crypto? Do you see them adopting it? That's a major theme, because we're looking at one of the most, I mean, you can almost say it's developed now, but the growth that you're going to see out of China and being a world power, it would be nice if they relaxed their laws a little bit. But what's going on actually in China from someone that knows everything? I mean, Are they adopting this? Are they nervous about it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me give you an insight. I'm an American who has been living in China for the past 15 years. I travel back and forth, of course. I'm currently in Las Vegas, in Nevada. So the issue with China is that what people don't realize and forget often is that China is actually a capital controlled society, meaning the foreign currencies are controlled, capital controls, meaning that people do not have the freedom to freely exchange from a foreign currency to the local currency, the Chinese renminbi, the yuan currency. They don't have that freedom to exchange back and forth. Even investors, businesses, companies don't either. So there are quotas. You have to apply for it. For most people, it's a $50,000 limit, meaning that it's measured in US dollar terms, meaning that foreigners can exchange up to $50,000 worth of foreign currencies into the local Chinese renminbi on a yearly basis, and vice versa from local Chinese people who want to travel out to exchange to foreign currencies for tourists spending money and stuff like that. It's been a limit that's been in place for as long as I remember, and in that way, that's the ultimate friction point with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is so free. Bitcoin essentially, even though it's not a government issued currency, Bitcoin is essentially a free flowing digital currency where the value is really market forces. It's really free floating. It's in my view, Bitcoin is the freest of all currencies. So in that sense, we started the exchange BTC China in 2011. We ran it for a good 6.5 years before having to shut it down in China. But it was a loophole, right? With Bitcoin, local people can buy Bitcoin and sort of exchange out of the currency. However, and by the way, the local currency doesn't leave the country. It's not like you're exporting it. It's just that you're matchmaker. You allow the local currency to go out with someone importing foreign currencies into China at the same time. That's what Bitcoin essentially allows for. So with that, with a sort of capital controlled society, you can't have Bitcoin exchanges operating without regulation. So because at the time in 2017, the government and the regulators didn't feel like it was the right time to regulate Bitcoin exchanges. So that's why they had to shut it down. Otherwise, it would go out of control. So I think those are the sort of main points there.
No, it makes sense. So I want to turn a page here because you just came out with a brand new book, which was released yesterday, The Promise of Bitcoin, The Future of Money and How It Can Work for You. I feel like this book is, I mean, who it got endorsed by is amazing. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but almost every big name in Bitcoin has been involved in Bitcoin and crypto. But what was the reason why? What are you trying to explain in this book? What's the purpose of it? And why now, right? Because you've been in this industry for so long, now you've seen the adoption. What's your motivation for writing this? And what's the message that you're trying to convey here to anybody that reads it? Because I know that you're excited about this, but just the timing, I figured it would come out a couple of years ago. Seems like there's much more to be told right now.
Yeah. I started this 3 years ago. Started this project 3 years ago. After I sold my company, BTCC, in early 2018, I thought I could write a book. At the time, I was giving a lot of speeches, traveling the world, going to conferences. And the motivation is I really want to tell the story of Bitcoin, tell it to ordinary people, tell it to regular people, Americans, people around the world, in Europe, Africa. And really, the reason is I want to tell it in a way that's not all technology focused, but tell it in the way that's fundamental why Bitcoin is something amazing, an amazing human invention. It's an investment of a lifetime. I've certainly benefited a lot financially from investing in Bitcoin, and I want to share that perspective to the rest of the world, and that's a motivation. So it's really written for the common person. It's not written for the geek sort of tech industry, not for the crypto industry. It's really for the regular person who is what I call Bitcoin curious. People who have heard about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency from the media, but they don't understand what it is. They don't understand how it works. They don't understand why it's valuable. I think the single biggest question people have is how can something that's not physical, something so digital, so virtual, have real value? Is it a Ponzi scheme? Is it a pump and dump? And my book goes into that. We also talk about the regulation. Basically, I start by talking about what I call the three horsemen, the three cornerstones of the industry. We have the exchanges, we have the Bitcoin mining itself, and also the wallets, and talk about the regulation, state of the world, and I also make some predictions. So it's really meant to educate the common person and teach them about what Bitcoin, the whole deal, is about.
Yeah, and some of those talking points too. I love the history part, of getting into Bitcoin, which is a good explanation. Yeah. You talk about why regulation can't crush Bitcoin, and also how if you continue to buy Bitcoin US dollars, the price is going to continue to go higher. And you just talk about like more the economics behind it. But is that really what led you to get into this? Because it seems weird, and coming from Silicon Valley, with technology every place. So I get the Bitcoin part, but to me, what's impressive here is someone who looks at the economy, studies the economy for decades. You really dig into why this is important, and also it's pretty impressive that you're like, hey, I still own gold. It's not as big as Bitcoin, but it sounds like you're a true believer that we're going to see the destruction of all paper currencies. It's just a matter of time. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth or not, but
I don't make that. Well, that's a controversial point. I can talk about the destruction of or the collapse of paper money, but let's go back. So I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. First of all, over the 10 years, I'm thankful to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is what got me to learn about economics. I'm not a trained economics person. I'm a trained sort of computer scientist, programmer, if you will. That's my industry background. That's what I learned and majored in college at Stanford. So that's what essentially allowed me to step through the doors of Bitcoin 10 years ago in 2011. By having that strong training in computer science, I didn't feel overwhelmed to go in to look at the white paper, to look at the code, and to understand the software, run it, start mining, set up computers to do that. So that was my benefit sort of insight. However, over the last 10 years, I can honestly say I learned much more about the economic principles behind it, the idea of libertarianism. So I'm much more of a libertarian now than I ever was. So I'm a believer in personal liberty, freedom, and also the important thing is freedom of money. Money to me is the proof of one's work. In other words, if you think about the money you have in your pocket, what does it represent? Well, it represents your savings. It's your savings from your past work, meaning that the money you have is a representation that in the past you've worked hard. I don't care if it's a summer job or during college, or if it's just a first job out of college or whatnot. You decide not to spend all of that money when you made it, so that you save it for the later day. To pay for rent, to pay for food, to pay for vacation, to pay for college for your children or whatever. So the money we have is essentially our choice to save it for the future. And Bitcoin is a perfect vehicle for that because it really captures that value due to its limitation of 21 million units. And with fiat money, the big issue is if you think about the US dollar today, it's actually has only been around, the country has been around for hundreds of years, right? The United States, the European countries, and so on. Many countries around the world who issue money have been around for hundreds of years. But the US dollar we have today is only 50 years old. This year, the US dollar will turn 50 years old this summer. And what I mean by that is that's when President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard in 1971. Meaning prior to 1971, the US dollar was actually a different beast. It was actually a version of gold. So think about the US dollar bill, the $1 bill, and think about quarters, the coins. If you have 4 quarters, it's equivalent to $1 bill, right? We think of it 4 quarters as $1, same as $1 bill, right? But the reality is those two mediums are different. Coins are metallic, paper notes are made of paper, okay? But yet they have the same value. So what I'm trying to say is a US dollar actually had a tie-in with gold. So prior to 1971, the US dollar was backed by gold, just like the US dollar was backed by quarters. So in that sense, the dollar and the gold was fundamentally the same equivalency. You can change gold to US dollars and US dollars to gold at a fixed rate. What happened in 1971 is Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. Gold shot up from $35 to an ounce all the way up to $800. Now I think it's at $1,500 or $1,800 per ounce of gold. So now the US dollar has lost like 99% of its value in this last century. So you understand what's going on here because it's unhinged. They can print as many dollars as they want. And by the way, that's the growth factor for Bitcoin, right? If they can print as many dollars as they want, whereas Bitcoin is limited to 21 million, I think anyone with some basic knowledge of math can sort of predict what's going to happen in the future. That's why I'm so bullish. As long as we continue to measure Bitcoin value, Bitcoin price in terms of a continued inflating currency like the US dollar, I think there's no limit to how high Bitcoin prices can go. So those are my thoughts.
No, we'll get to those forecasts in a second, but I just want to show guys here. The book came out yesterday, May 18th. I'm not going to forget that date because I happen to be my birthday.
This is the Amazon page.
And I want to just talk about real quick about where the people that endorse this. And I don't know if it's on this page, but you have Winklevoss
scroll
twins.
Down, you'll see it.
Yeah, so Winklevoss twins.
Tyler and Cameron.
Yeah, and you have CZ, CEO of Binance, Roger Ver, Gavin S. Anderson, who's formerly developer of Bitcoin.
Keep scrolling.
Keep going. There it is. And here we go.
Yeah, right? Those are the endorsements.
I mean, Michael Novogratz, I mean, all these people are very, very huge in the industry, which is incredible. So, yeah, I want to say congratulations on this. This is really great stuff. And now let's get to something that I wanted to talk about, which is your forecast, because you're very bullish on Bitcoin. However, your forecast may be the highest that I've seen. I want to see what the time frame is, because I'm sure, I would guess, and I could be wrong on this, and feel free to correct me, that in 2011, you saw this as a big deal. Did you really believe that it would be $1 trillion market? And I love the fact that you brought it up that, listen, this is 12 years. This is very, very quickly, right? Everything today is like 1 second and real time. But I mean, $1 trillion, did you think it would happen that quick? And where do you see this going? Because I've heard some of your forecasts, and in what time frame do you think you're going to hit that?
Yeah, when I learned about Bitcoin 2011, I remember distinctly Charlie and I talking about it, like how much could it be? I think it was at the time it was in the tens or maybe $100 million. And we're thinking whether it can get to $1 billion. And the reason our predictions were so low at the time in hindsight was because we barely understood it. Remember, we were computer science geeks trying to learn about this sort of economic revolution that we didn't understand what was going on. Now we started mining it, we sort of understood the technology, but we didn't understand the true economic implications of a global digital asset that was truly strictly limited, yet couldn't be stopped because of its decentralization. So I can very honestly tell you, over the last 10 years, I've learned more and more about Bitcoin. And the more I learn, and by the way, I'm learning from it from the perspective as an industry executive. I ran one of the world's largest exchanges, ran it for over 5 years, and really see firsthand in the world's largest country, in China, how feverish they were with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, the trading and the usage of it. I've used Bitcoin myself from a spending and payments perspective. When I was giving speeches in 2018, many conferences would pay me in Bitcoin to attend and speak at their conferences. So I seen firsthand the challenges making international payments in US dollars versus receiving Bitcoin payments. So I really have what I consider to be a very full, well-rounded perspective on Bitcoin and usefulness of it. So in that sense, I've been more and more bullish, more and more sure of myself in terms of the future of Bitcoin. So in terms of predictions, like I said, it reached $1 trillion recently, I think a month or two ago, in value. I know it's fallen a bit in this month in May 2021, but I think this year, I made this prediction almost 3 years ago, that in this bull market cycle of 2021, I called it back in December 2018, and you can check my Twitter feed for that. I said that Bitcoin will cross over 10,000, will start rallying in late 2020, and then the bull market will kick off in earnest in 2021. And by the end of this year, I on my Twitter feed, I predicted that Bitcoin can peak out at maybe 333,000. Now that number is just a simple back of the envelope calculation based on how Bitcoin has appreciated in the past cycles. So there's not a lot of scientific rigor to that. But for me, even today, Bitcoin hovering at $40,000-$50,000, it can easily get over 100,000 this summer, and I think it can very well touch 150 or 200K. And I think there's also a small or medium possibility that could hit $300,000. But the caveat is that because Bitcoin is very volatile, next year after the bull market, it could fall back at least 50%, 60, 70, and maybe 80 or 85%. So that's where it's really rough. After every sort of happy bull market cycle, Bitcoin inevitably goes through a multi-year bear cycle. And that's what keeps the checks and balances. It keeps the naysayers and keeps the bullish people, both parties are right at some point. But overall, I predict that for the next bull cycle in 4 or 5 years, Bitcoin will cross out above 500,000, even $1 million. So still very, very bullish about it.
So $1 million is I got to tell you, though, when you're telling me that, hey, we can see a 70-80% correction, it's not easy for people to go. I mean, we've seen a little bit of a correction, right? But hey, you're good in 5 years. You could see a value decline 80%, but don't worry about it. It's not I can picture a lot of people being nervous about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, because if you have to study the price history, I mean, the correction can go 85%. I think it's gone 85% below in almost every bull cycle. But the thing to remember is it's a flash crash. So it goes down there, it stays down there for hours or for days or for a few weeks. So it's very hard to catch it, a falling knife. And by the time, by the way, most people when it crashes that low, no one's interested in buying it. All the people who thought they want to wait for a lower price, they get scared and they don't buy it. So that's why I tell people the best time in my book, I make a clear point. The best time to buy Bitcoin is right now when you have the conviction, when you have the motivation to buy it. It doesn't matter the price because the whole investment thesis for Bitcoin is that when you buy it, it's going to go up 20 times, 100 times, right? You're not buying it for 10, 20% return. So therefore, even if a price corrects 10, 20, 30%, it doesn't matter. What you're looking for is a 100 bagger, so to speak. So for a 100 bagger, buy it when you have the conviction. Don't wait for it to drop because by the time it drops, you actually lose your conviction. You lose your sort of curiosity and your intent to buy, and that's the mistake most people make.
Okay, now a couple other questions here before we go, because I want to get your thoughts on it. We're seeing a cryptocurrency called Dogecoin. Everybody knows about it now. It's Saturday Night Live, and I had never had so many people come up to me and ask me about it. They never knew anything about cryptocurrency. Should I buy Dogecoin before Elon Musk goes on Saturday Night Live? We know that this was started out as pretty much a joke, and it still has no utility functions. Does this kind of like, piss you off a little bit where for me, crypto is a real industry. It's going to continue to disrupt so many different industries across the board, especially investment banking. That's why I base my company on it, starting a security token and launching it. But when I see Dogecoin, it gets me a little upset where I'm like, I just feel like it's cryptocurrency. It's a religion. It's for the people. And I understand that point of why the value is going up, kind of like Tesla, where you can't really value it on a fundamental basis. But it also, to me, takes away a little bit from what's really going on in crypto and how many great things there are, because this is the one that everyone's starting to focus on right now. Does that bother you at all? Or you think it's a good thing there's a Dogecoin out there?
Yeah. So these days, I'm at peace with myself about all the cryptocurrencies, all the altcoins, and all that out there. In the early days, many, many years ago, when the altcoins first came on the market, I was a little upset that how come, we're diverting attention from Bitcoin being the real cryptocurrency and getting all tainted with all the altcoins and what people call shitcoins sometimes. So these days, I know I can't stop it, the misinformation out there. And there's always people who are trying to make a quick buck by pumping their altcoins or shitcoin. And there's also people who are not necessarily evil. They just somehow get swept up with the mood and they start advertising it just because they think, they get all riled up for it. So Dogecoin, the issue is that there's no limit on supply. So it's a continually inflating money. So it's a meme coin. Obviously, as with anything in life, if there's enough people who believe there's value in it, there's value in it. But fundamentally, it's kind of like gold, silver, and copper. Why is gold worth more than silver, worth more than copper? It's because gold fundamentally, from a chemistry perspective, it has better features and functionality than silver and copper. And I can go into all the issues with silver and copper that gold doesn't have. So for that reason, Dogecoin will always, I don't care how many people buy it, when the fundamentals come back, Dogecoin will always stand inferior to Bitcoin from a technology perspective. So I think that's why, for the people who are hyping up and buying Dogecoin today, I think you have to be very, very careful in terms of making that financial decision. I still think Bitcoin may not be sexy, but Bitcoin is the investment that's going to hold up its value, that's going to be worth a lot in years to come.
No, it makes sense. And I'm going to ask you one more last question here. So you said earlier that 2 years apart from Charlie, and I know 2011, you said you followed Charlie when he started to mine Bitcoin, and he's the founder of Litecoin. You're also the founder of China's first Bitcoin exchange. So is there a competitiveness there? Because with my brother, I'm 3 years apart. We're really competitive. Or is it a great relationship? Or is it always competitive? Because you guys are both doing very, very well. And it's nice to see where the industry is. And you guys got it early, which is really cool. So
yeah, we have a very good relationship. It's not competitive in the sense we're siblings. He taught me about Bitcoin. So we learn from each other. And we support each other. He's right now he left Coinbase several years ago. He's doing his own thing now, full time on helping Litecoin succeed. And I've launched a new company called Ballet. We make hardware cold storage wallets, and we make these cold storage really safe wallets for everyday people. They're I think the number one easiest to use wallets for everyday people. So I'm very happy of that. I could have retired, but I thought of what else to do after I sold my company. And I thought that this was one industry I really want to help, which is help normal people get into cryptocurrency by providing them a solution to store and hold their cryptocurrency investments in something that's really easy to use. On the marketplace today, all the wallets are too hard to set up, too hard to use. A lot of have security flaws and stuff like that. So I think I've come up with a very unique solution. It's called Ballet. Check it out. You can buy them on Amazon. Charlie and I, even though we don't live in the same city, we keep in touch. And we're just excited to be participating in the industry and also watching Bitcoin grow. Like I said, I can't wait until Bitcoin turns 21.
Yeah, and do you have the Ballet card? Do you usually have that, right, available?
Yeah, I can sort of get one if you I can step out of the frame and get one. And
it's
Hold
fine.
On. Just give me a second.
All right, go ahead, go. I love doing this. Go ahead.
Keep going, yeah.
That's why these video
really
things
awesome.
are so much fun. Putting people on the spot in the middle of the interview. I love doing it.
So this is an example.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a hardware wallet. It's a physical wallet made of stainless steel, and it's ready to go. It's got a QR code on front. This is the Bitcoin deposit address, and the private keys are on the back of that. It's actually a two-factor private key made in 2 different countries, so it's super secure. It's kind of like a two-way multi-sig. And the most important feature is this actually stores multiple cryptocurrencies. So even though this is a Bitcoin logo, the Bitcoin logo just represents that this QR code is ready to go for Bitcoin. But you can also store Ethereum. You can store all the ERC20 tokens. You can store dogecoin. You can store Litecoin. You can store all the top cryptocurrencies. I think close to over 100 currencies. And you can even store, recently we launched NFT support. So any ERC721 NFTs we can put on here, such as CryptoKitties, and what is it, cyberpunks, something like that. So a bunch of NFT stuff. I'm not really into it, but people love storing their NFTs and cryptocurrency on these wallets. And the idea is it's a bearer asset. We've turned a digital bearer asset into a physical bearer asset. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a digital bearer asset. Whoever has the private keys own the coins. It's not a titled asset. And similarly, this is a physical bearer asset. So with physical bearer asset, now you can put cryptocurrency on here and you can give it as a gift. You can give it to your children for their birthday, for Hanukkah, for bar mitzvah. You can give it out for their day, Father's Day. You can give it out as a tooth fairy present for Christmas.
You got it all figured out.
In Asia and China. Oh yeah, in Asia and China, this is very popular as red envelopes for New Year gifts. In Chinese culture, people give out red envelopes. So you could load them up with Bitcoin and then give them out to children. And then when they turn 18, when they turn 21, it's going to be an amazing amount of value in there.
No, it's great stuff. Well, Bobby, listen, I wish you success with your book, The Promise of Bitcoin, The Future of Money, How it can work for you. Very excited. So I know you're going to sell lots and lots of copies, even through my audience as well. And if someone wants to get in touch with you outside that, how could they do that, learn more about you?
Yeah. The best way is follow me on Twitter. My handle name is Bobby C. Lee. So at BOBBYCLEE. I just have over 100,000 followers on Twitter, so please follow me on that. I have a Facebook account as well. And then my website is bobbylee.com. You can go there. You could order my book. You can also order on Amazon if you like it. Please feel free to leave a review on Amazon. I think, and by the way, the book, if you're listening to the podcast, you're probably in the industry, crypto industry. Both the book and the wallets, these are for newbies, right? I really cater to the new audience. I really want to get more people into crypto. I want to help onboard the next 1 billion users in crypto. So I've done that through an exchange. Now I'm doing it through a wallet company, and now most recently as an author through a book. So hopefully we can get more new people on board into cryptocurrency and help them sort of not think about just the fiat money they have in their wallets that's depreciating every single day. The joke I tell is the $100 bill you have in your wallet, the most it's ever worth is right now, meaning every moment from now on it's going to be worth less and less and less. So that's a very scary thought.
Well, we'll leave it there. Listen, but thank you so much for coming on the podcast and how busy you are. Again, I wish you so much success with your book, and hopefully you'll join us again soon.
Yes, thank you.